Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Battling Brushes with me, Sam Healy, and Rob Oren. We'll hear from him a little bit later on. Today we're starting our series, our this month's series on Imperial Assault. I'll be painting the Stormtroopers from the Imperial side and the probe droids, and then Rob's going to take the Rebel Troopers and the Wookies from the Rebel side, and hang on to your hats. This is where the journey begins.
I'm going to go with more of a metallic look than a flat black or anything like that. So a black base coat for metallics is usually the way I'd like to go. And again, this is just going to be kind of underneath everything. So you do want to kind of get a good coat on there, but don't worry too much about messing too much of it up, because this is just the base coat. There isn't going to be a whole lot of this showing at the end. This is just to give it a kind of a uniform look. And again, this is kind of messy because I'm not really too caring about this. I'm doing this mainly for a little bit of a shadow effect on some parts, and on the other parts I'm just kind of giving it that base military look. After that base coat or that base dry brush of uniform gray is done drying, you're going to take some lead belcher or some other kind of gunmetal gray or silver or something to that effect, and just like the other one, just give it a good dry brush to it so that you can see it's making it look like a metallic gray instead of just a gray. And again, this is going to be a lot less rigorous than the first one because you're just hitting the highlights. And this is really just kind of barely hitting everything except those raised edges. Those raised edges are really getting a lot of the paint, and then everything else is getting some, but not a whole lot. Runefang steel is a lighter color silver. For example, here's one that I already finished, and if you can see there, it's very slight, it's very subtle, but you can see that this is looks a lot darker than this one. This one has a little bit of a lighter shade to it, but you still have all of those shadows and crevices in there. That's what we're going for. Okay, so, and I just usually, this one's even lighter, a lighter touch than the other, because again, you're just wanting to give just a little bit of hint of that color there. You really want all those shadows that are still there to stay. What I've chosen is I'm going to put some dragon red in there for some of those lights, maybe a deep blue, some green skin. Then we're going to go back and touch up the red with a little bit of lava orange to give it a more than just a flat finish. It's more like a three-dimensional type thing. Do the same with goblin green to that other one. And then we'll also throw some hints of yellow in there too for some buttons and lights and stuff like that. On to the Stormtroopers. I'm getting my paintbrush full and thick of paint, and then just dabbing it off. Okay, so I'm getting most of the excess off, but then with these I like to start on the back and just kind of give a now once you get to the legs, try to go the direction of the legs. That'll help keep it smooth to an extent. All right, so again, we're just trying to work the paint into as many of those surfaces as we can. Don't worry about getting into the crevices where the black is going to go in between the pieces of armor, because we are going to come back and touch those up with the matte black. This first coat is going to be, it's almost going to look like a gray. And that's exactly what we're looking for. We want the gray appearance because we want a little bit of a 3D effect on the armor too. So just work that paint in there as much as possible. Give a base coat for that other white to come on. Alright, so we'll set him down and let him dry a little bit, move on to the next one. Okay, now after you've given that first coat through, you can see it kind of looks grayish. Actually, it looks really gray, but that's okay because now we're going to hit it with another coat of dry brush white, and you'll see how it just kind of gives a little bit more definition. This one right here is a first coat. This is the second coat, so you can see how it is lightening up there. So you want to get a good bit amount of paint in that little detail brush, and then again just kind of pull along that top edge. Okay. Then there are certain things that you're going to want to make sure you're detailing. Like that little square is right on the edge there. And there's another one over here too. These little detail brushes, a lot of times they'll do the work for you. You just have to be able to use it right. Because they're so thin that they get in that little crevice a lot better than you would be able to. And then the last thing you really need to do is get that base just cleaned up a little bit. And again, just like I did with the probe droid, you just want to use a nice flat black and cover it up. Work from the center out. Be careful once you start getting over to the parts of the model that are touching the base. Doing this actually last provides a pretty good way. It's kind of a trick actually, because it's kind of hard. If you remember, you might not, because you might not be as heavy into this as I am, but the stormtroopers, the bottom of their boots are black. You know, the soles, you can see the sole of their boot, and so this actually will give you an opportunity to make it look like the sole of their boot is showing if you just let part of the brush touch the very bottom of their boot. If you look there where it kind of, you know, the side of his foot, the light hits it just right, it looks like there's a sole there. So it's just a little thing that you can try.
So that is the Stormtroopers and the Imperial probe droids. Hopefully you enjoyed watching that process. It was a booger. Stormtroopers are not easy to paint. You have to take your time at them. Probe droids were pretty simple, but the Stormtroopers took a little bit longer. So let's hear from Rob. Rob, what you got for us?
And those Stormtroopers look great. The only thing is I wouldn't have put too much detail into the backs of them, because basically nobody's going to see them because they're going to be laying on the board most of the time after my Rebel Troopers take care of them. And speaking of Rebel Troopers, I'm also going to be doing the Wookies today, so let's get to the paint board and start working on them. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint their flesh, because I can be pretty sloppy with this and clean it up. So we're just going to get it in there. And if you notice, he has a chin strap in there. So I'm just going to make sure that I get in all those crevices that are kind of hard to get at, getting behind his neck, because I don't want to try to do that once I paint the black here. So I usually find that that's the easiest procedure to do, is to get the flesh on here first, as you can see. And as you see, we got the flesh done on all these guys. For this, I use a Citadel. It's a Keslev flesh, which is perfect. Okay, the next color that we're going to use is either a Chaos Black or a lamp Americana. I'm always going to try to give you two types of paint. That way you guys can determine which paint that you want to pick up. And what we're going to do, and I've talked about this many times, is that we are going to start from the middle and work our way to the edges. This way we don't get it all over the place. But because this is only the second color, you can be a little sloppy here. But we want to be careful when we get near any flesh. So we're going to paint the jacket. Okay, so now that we also did the blaster. Moving to a smaller brush because this is going to be a tough paint right here. So again, like I've preached time after time, this is a sky blue or a pale blue in Americana, and we're just going to work our way towards the edges. There we go. And we're going to come down. Again, you should start in the middle, work your way to the edge there. Of course, you just saw me not do that. Then come up from the top here. I'm going to try to do this on left. Then we're going to come underneath here. And this is where you want to turn the guy on the side, because you want to get that underneath part and just work your way from the middle. And I'm going to try to show you here. Water down your paints. It's very important that you water down your paints. Better to put 2 coats than 1 coat and lose the definition of the model. We've got the blue on there. So you can use a Desert Tan Americana or Xandri Dust, which is what I'm going to use here because I want those pants kind of dark. And I got a little water here, and I'm just going to mix this together. And let's get those pants going. Let's see. Remember, start lower and work your way to the edge. Try to prevent as much cleanup as you have to later. It makes things easier. Again, in the middle, work your way down. See how I'm slowly working my way down to that boot? Because I'm gonna show you guys how to detail these up a little bit, because it'll look really good. So I'm going to finish these pants here. Now we're going to pull out an old friend of mine. It's called Reichland Flesh Shade. It is a shade or a wash. And get our brush nice and wet with it. And we've got to be very careful to push this around. But we're going to put this on his hands, on his face. Try to get it down on his neck. And you could see that it's going into all the recesses. Then bring it down onto the pants. If you have a little extra, that's fine. Like someone wrote, or like I say all the time, sometimes these shades can really be liquid talent. Because look at that. Right into the recesses, into the face real well. It brings out that strap, which we're going to fix in a minute. The hands are have more depth to it. And there you have it. We have our Rebel Trooper. So let's move on to the Wookiees and see how we make out with them. We get our Wookiees out, and then I'm going to use a Dryad Bark, or you can use a Mississippi Mud Americana. Get some on the palette, thin it out, and then go to town. Don't worry about anything else. Take a medium brush and get it in every single groove and everywhere. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take some of our XV88, okay? And we are going to go over everywhere with the XV88, which is a lighter color. Now we're going to use some washes on this too. Yeah, see what we're getting there? See how it's actually raising up over? A long way from finish on this guy. And again, it's a simplified method, but it's a method that's going to work out for us in the long run. Alright, let's move on to the next step. Okay, next we're going to start applying the black onto the crossbow and his belt. Just on the inside, try not to hit the fur and just take your time and bring that belt around. We still have a lot of work on that belt. And there you go. So far, so good. Okay, next we're going to take our lead belcher, which is our gunmetal silver, and we're just going to hit the points that need gunmetal. Okay, so we're going to use Newell oil. I only got a little in this one here, but that's okay, I got another one. Now I want to show you what I want to do here, because it's going to make it very easy for you. And all I want to do is just take and dip my brush and go into his eyes a little bit, brush some of this into the back of his hair, and you can see what it's doing here, how it's darkening up his lips, his mouth, and his eyes, because after all, and we're going to let that dry. And we're going to do the same for his buddy here, but his buddy isn't as dark. So I want to be very careful in how I do this and just aim for the eyes. Actually, I'm going to drag some of this off my brush. There we go. And just get that into his facial structure. Now all of a sudden that gives a good shadow, and it's starting to bring out what we want to bring out. There we go. Into his fur. A little bit over the metal. Always want to put Newell oil on the metal because it always brings out the shadow of the metal, and when we go over with the rune fang, you'll see what I'm talking about. So our next step, Reikland Fleshade. It has a nice red tint to it, and we want to get that on the fur because if you look at the movies and stuff, there is a nice red tint that our little Wookiee friend here has. And there you have it. There's this week's guys. Let's take a look. We got our Rebel Troopers and our 2 Wookiees. Painted and ready to go. There you have it. The Rebel Troopers and the Wookiees all taken care of. We did a pretty good job, nice simple job on it, and to make things easy for you guys to understand how to do them. And I tried to keep things very, very simple without all kinds of blends and different highlighting. I want you guys to pick up the brush and do them, and send Sam and myself your pictures and your work as you progress along. Now, while I was painting all those, I started to think to myself, wasn't it the first movie that just Han Solo and Chewbacca chased like 30 or 40 stormtroopers and they all ran from him? You know, 40 against 2? You know, I have a feeling, Sam, that it's going to be deja vu all over again.
All right, Rob, that's how it's going to be, huh? Okay, I got you, boy. Now it's time to play Who is Your Daddy and What Does He Do? Who's your daddy, Rob? And I'll tell you what, bro, I'm going to wipe the floor with your rebel scum come live playthrough time. So what you got to say about that, bud? So anyway, folks, thanks for joining us this week. Be sure to tune back in next week where Rob is going to be painting the Rebel Saboteurs and some of the new characters from the basic storyline of Imperial Assault on the Rebel side. And then I'll be painting the Emperor's Red Guard and the ATST next week. So tune back in to Battling Brushes. Thanks so much for watching, y'all. You're the best. We'll see you next time.
I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at coolstuffinc.com.